barely survived. And a group of folks in Texas were very concerned about that and decided that it was time for this community and other communities to start standing up and saying how important this industry is to us, both as an economic driver, but more importantly, as a beacon for what the United States is capable of doing. And so every year, the group has been growing. We now have, this year, I think we have just over 70 travelers. We will be meeting with over 300 congressional offices to talk about how important the space industry is, and human space exploration in particular, to all of us. So a busy week, and appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. And most importantly, or the biggest thanks to Administrator Nelson, who has a tremendously busy schedule. And so I want to leave most of the time to him. With that, I'd like to introduce NASA's Administrator, Bill Nelson. Let's see. So Senator Nelson, of course, has a distinguished career in the U.S. Congress. He's the 14th NASA Administrator and was sworn in on May 3rd of 2021. While he was in Congress, he chaired the Space Subcommittee in the U.S. House of Representatives for 6 years, later served as the ranking member on the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, where he's recognized for a leading space program advocate in Congress. In 2010, Senator Nelson and Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison passed a landmark legislation that mapped out NASA's future that we're all now benefiting from today. And that was further affirmed in 2017 when Senator Nelson worked with Senator Ted Cruz and authored the NASA Transition Act of 2017. As many of you may know, in 1986, he flew on the 24th flight of the space shuttle. The mission on Columbia orbited the Earth 98 times over 6 days, and he conducted 12 medical experiments, including the first American stress test in space, which I imagine helped prepare him well for the current duties he's serving in. I had the fortune of meeting the administrator on one of his trips to the Johnson Space Center when he came down to meet with some of the folks down there, and I worked for Mike Coates at the time, and was an honor to get us to spend some time with him. He's a great leader for NASA and for the country. And so, Administrator Nelson, I'll turn the mic over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks to all of you, and you're doing this in a voluntary capacity of offering yourselves to go and try to spread the word on the Hill. And I want you to know that's important. If you are going to see your individual congressman, I want to encourage you to insist that you are a constituent and that you want to see the member of Congress person to person. It's a little more difficult with regard to a senator, unless it's a senator from a small population state, in which case I think you should request of the staff to see the individual member. Often I would counsel folks that wanted to articulate a particular project or a particular piece of legislation that they, in fact, I don't want to diminish the role of staff, but I can just tell you that the member has so much on their mind that they might not get it filtered correctly through the staff. And so if you can talk directly to the member, it's all the better. And of course, you'll be talking to them about the subject matter that we're going to discuss today, which is the civilian space budget, whether it's science, whether it's STEM education, whether it's us going back to the moon, whether it's our working with international partners, whether it's low Earth orbit and the space station, whether it's research, whether it's the gee whiz stuff that we have experienced with Perseverance and the little helicopter, whatever it is, if you can convey it to them directly, it's all the better. And you know the subject matter. I don't have to tell you about that. If you want us to go to the moon, show me the money. And there are more ways that you can approach this. You can drag it out over time, or you can do it quicker. And although 2024 is still the goal, space is hard. And there we see by history, it takes a longer period of time because we get unexpected things when you're pressing the edge of the envelope and that you're developing new technologies. So if we want to speed up that timetable, the president's budget is one thing, and it has been a very robust budget in areas like STEM and science and U.S. innovation, and it is a budget that, if you want us to really have a competition, because what NASA requested over a year ago was $3.4 billion for Artemis, and the Congress only gave 850 million in this current fiscal year. Then there's going to have to be some more money if you want a vigorous competition. And another way to skin that cat is to put it in the jobs bill, otherwise known as the infrastructure bill. And so there are different vehicles, what we're talking about. So you can point, for example, one vehicle is what we see just passed the Senate last week. It's the NASA Authorization Act. It was a combined cooperative competition in the international arena science bill, but NASA was attached to it. And Maria Cantwell, the chairman of the committee, along with Roger Wicker, the ranking member of the full committee, put in the bill that NASA would get an additional $10 billion budget authorization over 4 years for Artemis and the competition. All right, that's one point of reference. Then you'll see the House start their process. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have something similar, but that's just authorization. Then you have to go to the appropriations, and that's going to be coming along. And how will they appropriate? Will they appropriate in the appropriations bill, or will they have it come along in a jobs bill? Because there's an R&D section in the jobs bill. There's also an infrastructure section of the jobs bill. NASA needs about $5 billion over the next 10 years additional on infrastructure, because we've got a lot of dilapidated infrastructure in our 10 centers and 10 facilities. So there are multiple points at which you can discuss what's happening in the civilian part of space. And oh, by the way, sometimes the lines blur between civilian space and defense space because of having to share information and so forth. A very good example of that is the Air Force, now the Space Force, tracks all of the debris in space. And of course, there's a lot of sharing of information, and NASA, of course, is key, as are our commercial friends, in getting out of the way of some of that debris that could have a catastrophic effect, particularly when human life is in the line of sight of this coming debris. So I'm going to stop right there, open it up to your comments and questions.
Good morning, Senator, or good afternoon. This is Joe Mayer. I happen to be the chair of Citizens for Space Exploration, but that doesn't mean that I don't have problems getting on some of these calls. And I did this morning here, just a little bit. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Brian, for picking up in my absence. I did want to underscore, Senator, you talked about access to the members. You, through your career, have been extraordinarily accessible to folks like Citizens and others, and we greatly appreciate it. And indeed, your time with us today is another indication, another manifestation of your willingness to talk directly with us. I did want to let you remind you of our of our history in terms of we meet with our constituent members. We definitely do. We generally, and this year we'll have a variation of that. We generally bring about 100 people to Washington, D.C. from 25 to 27 states. We often have 30 to 40 university students with us, and we see 300 to 400 congressional offices.
When
in
will
our
that
business
occur, Joe?
This is part of it. It's going to kick off tomorrow, matter of fact, Senator. So we have over 300 virtual meetings established so far, and we continue to work that. I loved your message, and we'll reinforce that about if you want us to accomplish missions, you need to provide the budget, and your comments on the specifics of how we might do that. Let me ask, if I could, how well do you think you spent a lot of time in the House and in the Senate? How well do the members, do you think, understand and appreciate the level of funding that NASA has provided as a percentage of the federal budget relative to the return on that investment, and how our organizations, grassroots organizations like ours, can help in that education process?
As to your question of their understanding, I'd say it's minimal. As to the importance of your visit to be a part of the education, as to the importance of the space program, that is huge.
Yeah, but and we have been doing this for about 30 years through the times of the International Space Station debates in the House and the Senate. Still remember Congressman Romer was a friend of mine when he was a staffer on the Senate side, but took a different tack when he joined the House. But he made for interesting times, and we do try to communicate that grassroots support by a broad coalition of our members who make up the Citizens group. Do you have any thoughts that you might share with us as to, the importance of international leadership in space? And the United States has done that with respect to the International Space Station, 16 nation undertaking, our collaboration with Russia through good times and through bad. But any thoughts as it relates to why it's so important to maintain that level of leadership on a global scale, and how it might relate to our relations now and in the future with both, for example, Russia and China?
Well, it's huge. NASA is an element of the projection of power for the U.S. It is what we define as soft power. Usually, no matter where you are in the world, the opinion of NASA is favorable. And because of that, it becomes an important part of our international diplomacy. And the proof's in the pudding, because you can take two arch enemies with nuclear tipped rockets pointed at each other, like the Soviet Union and the United States, and you can have cooperation in space, not only where crews are cooperating, but where they're actually living together. And that's happened since 1975 with Apollo-Soyuz. So this is a huge area of international diplomacy and cooperation for peaceful purposes.
Thank you, Senator. You know, I'm want to mention the fact that for a number of years, the citizens groups in our messaging have included comments and references to China and their activities in space. And I must say that for many years, it looked like we really weren't getting any traction as we made those references, even to the point of one year, I suggested to my colleagues that we delete the references to China. And I'm glad that my colleagues convinced me that that would not be a wise idea. Can you comment kind of specifically as well you can relative to China and how China could potentially try to use that as one of their, to drive wedges between us and some of our traditional partners, try to use their space program, their space activities as a way to compete against the United States?
Well, I think we're already seeing that competition. When they landed on Mars, they are the second nation to successfully land a rover on Mars that operates. And although we did that years ago in the 1970s, nevertheless, you can't sneeze at this accomplishment. When you take what China has said in the public press, that they want to land 3 landers on the south pole of the moon, when they are now talking to the Russians about doing a cooperative venture to the moon,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to take all of that very seriously.
Yes, yeah, they are certainly important competitors and ones that demand that we maintain a leadership role in space and working with our partners. If I could pick up on your comment about the infrastructure needs that NASA has, and I appreciate your commenting on that and the fact that it reflects the needs of many centers, all of the centers within the NASA constellation. But I know some of our colleagues down at Stennis, for example, they and that community is interested now that very successful green run tests with the SLS rocket and so forth. They're wondering, are there additional thoughts as to how to maintain the viability, vitality, I guess, really, of Stennis and Michoud in the future? Do you have any thoughts on that you might share, as well as anything that you might share relative to any of the other centers? Please feel free.
Yeah, there are plenty of rocket engines to test for the future. In the immediate, there's the exploration upper stage for the SLS. And the SLS core will continue to be assembled over at Michoud, and then it'll come over to Stennis and test. And once they get through the first 16, what I call the SSMEs, which were the Space Shuttle main engines, which we're going to use those 16 on the first 4 flights, you got to have a follow-on engine, and that'll be tested. In the meantime, you've got all kinds of private companies that are going to be testing their engines at Stennis. So I think Stennis is in good shape for a while.
Senator, there's a lot of folks that would be very, very pleased to hear that, and I think agree with you that Stennis, as well as the other key NASA centers for exploration are an important part of our future. You referenced and I referenced the SLS rocket. Any thoughts with respect to trying to ensure the production rates to make that as cost effective for the taxpayers as possible?
Cheaper and faster is better. How's that?
Yeah. I it's hard to argue with that. You're you betcha. You haven't lost any of your political sensitivities to what sells and what makes a good argument, and counting on your partners to deliver the goods. Let me ask, and I want to really commend you for your commitment to maintain that goal of 2024. You know, a lot of the pundits, a lot of the industry, I think, fully expected that the president would move away from that almost automatically upon taking office, and you pleasantly surprised people, not giving up on that, and you're out fighting for the budget that will make it a doable do. Why are goals, maintaining goals like that, so important when it seems like, it would be really pretty simple just to say, well, it's not 2024 anymore, it's going to be 2028, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be that? Why do you think that that's important from, in your current position as NASA administrator, working with industry, as well as your previous perspective in the political arena from a congressional point of view? Why is that goal, maintaining that, working towards it, so important?
Well, you have to have a goal, and the goal is 2024, but it sure would be a lot easier to get to 2024 if a year and a half ago, if the Congress had given the money that NASA had requested in order to try to get there with a competition. And now that the Congress is insisting on a competition on what should be the ultimate lander, not just the first demonstration, look at the reality. We didn't have the money all this past year. And then look at the reality that, well, there's a bid protest. And that's 100 days that you can't do anything until you get the decision by the General Accounting Office as to whether or not the bid protest will be accepted. And if so, what do? Do you go back to square one? So put on top of that, space is hard. So you have to have some sobering reality splashed all over you as you approach what's going to happen in the future. But the goal is 2024. So that's all I can say. Just stay tuned is the answer.
Well, we're going to do the very best we can as a citizens group, a grassroots advocacy group, to help you in that regard, because you're right, having that as a goal drives progress. It drives a lot of commitment and the work that needs to be done. You referenced commercial. From my perspective, I've been around a little while. I've kind of tracked your career, but more at a distance, watching you serve in public service. And I can remember really that we had government space, and then for a period of time, Brian referenced the 2010 authorization bill, came at a point where it looked like we were going to have a warfare between commercial space and government space. Then we seemed to move beyond that, and we then kind of in our respective spheres said, well, we should have not either or. We should have commercial space and government space. Now we've moved to something that seems to be much more synergistic, where the distinctions are less clear. We're more integrated, I should say. And we see that with Artemis, see that with other programs where commercial services, companies, are integrated into one single whole program. Can you comment about how commercial space and government space and the contractors associated with them, what you see for the future, how we work together for the betterment of the whole?
Well, I think we've already seen the fruits of the 2010 NASA bill that Kay Bailey Hutchinson and I were involved with, setting NASA on a dual course on its human program. The dual course being commercial, which would primarily be LEO, and get NASA out of low Earth orbit and go explore. And as we explore, we're already seeing the public-private partnership as we are considering the lander. By the way, we'll see the continuation of the international partners on the gateway, just as we have had very successful on the International Space Station. As you go on and further explore the cosmos, I see a lot of commercial interest out there. So I think we're seeing that already demonstrated in front of our eyes, and I think that will continue. And I am turning into a pumpkin.
We're just going to say thank you. Over and out.
I am delighted to visit with you all, and I want to thank you again for what you're doing. I think it's very important. We've got about maybe 20 folks on this call. I want you to multiply in many, many numbers and go invade the Hill. Take the Hill. It will be very, very helpful to our nation's space program. Thank you so much.
Senator, thank you for your service. Thank you from the Citizens Group. We will go forward and spread the good news and the gospel of space and exploration and U.S. leadership. You can count on us.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, did we lose Joe in there?
I hope not. I'm going to text him. I'm texting him. Hang on.
I didn't ask permission, but I did just take a screenshot if we're allowed to use it for anything, or if y'all want it.
Okay. Joe's coming back on.
Hey, Jimmy Spence, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Can you send me the password to the Citizens for Space Twitter account?
I don't know that.
Who does?
All right, I'll check on this, and another gentleman is back this week who may
I'm
have
back,
it.
Kim.
I have it. It's Stacy DeFore. I have it. I'll send it to you, Barry.
Great, thank you, Stacy.
Great. Okay, Joe.
Well, first of all, thanks everybody who joined the call. Brian, thank you so much. I was starting to try to get on 15 minutes ahead of time. I had pre-tested it with Tish last week, but you know, the best laid plans of mice and men. The shortened version of the link just wouldn't do it for me. So thank you for stepping in, and then also for allowing me to pick up Q&A. We had, given the time frame, we had like previously kind of agreed that try to collect some questions that would cover some major topic areas, but would allow us to move through them and get as much as we could from Senator Nelson as we could in the limited time that we had. So I hope the questions reflected things that the group generally were interested in, and that and his responses were certainly helpful. Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you. I would like to make one editorial comment myself, and I think we've stressed this in Citizens throughout the years. As much as I appreciate the senator's comment, and it's true, to get to the member, that's not always the easiest thing to do. He, as I indicated, has been extraordinarily accessible to constituent groups. I've been in groups that have met with him multiple times, and he is very, very generous with his time in that regard. But not everybody is. And there is a filter every time you go from one person to another person. We've all played the telephone game or heard about it. You know, there are those filters in the translation, but the staff, the members are very, very busy, and they we've number of us have served in those positions. They rely on the staff to sort things out, to be on top of things, and so forth. And they look to them, and the staff has enormous influence in shaping the way that issues are presented to the members, oftentimes. So I don't want anyone feel that meeting with staff is somehow a second-rate operation whatsoever. When we can meet with the members, it's terrific. Meeting with staff can be very helpful. So that's the only editorial comment I wanted to make based on what I heard, other than to really commend the senator for his willingness to meet with the group. Other than that, let me surrender my time, Brian, to you and to Kim for anything in way of orientation for the group overall. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Kim, do you have any updates that you want to give in terms of just trip protocol, anything else? I know Kelly's doing the do's and don'ts, but anything logistically that you want to cover, and then I'll dive in.
Not really. I just want to make sure that everybody continues to watch their email, because changes are coming in. Sometime changes are coming in. Some new meetings are coming in. That'll continue to happen, possibly tomorrow, possibly Wednesday. So just continue to watch your email for those changes and act on them as quickly as you can. As far as everything else, I just want to, just remind everybody, as you know, that when you're on the Zoom call, it's they're going to see you. It's just like being in the office almost, and just obviously conduct yourself accordingly. Speak professionally, look professional, and try to honor the time that you schedule with them, be it 15 minutes, 20, whatever it is. Honor that because they are busy people, and have fun with it.
Great stuff, Kim. Thank you. And with that, maybe that's a good transition to let Kelly go first if she's online and ready to go, to talk a little bit about some of the trip do's and don'ts, and then I can close it out with some of the key messaging.
Yeah, I'm online, Brian.
Hey, Kelly, over to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through most of these are going to sound pretty common sense, but you would be surprised what has happened on these trips in the past. So it's always a good reminder for us. These are going to sound a little different than our usual do's and don'ts, given that we're in a virtual environment this year. So I'll kind of divide it out. Pre-meeting, things that we like for you to do is, first of all, don't change the meeting time. Even if that time doesn't work for you or one of your team members, Robin is the one who's in charge of all of our meeting scheduling. So if something doesn't work, feel free to reach out to Robin, to Brian, to Joe. If there's something that the whole team can't attend, we can definitely get somebody to cover. But the last thing we'll want you to do is to coordinate directly with the person that you're meeting with to change times. From a preparation standpoint, We have a lot of materials that were sent out for everybody to review. Be familiar with what you're going to review in the meeting itself. Read those handouts, and then as a group, you can work with your group lead and work out how you're going to actually conduct each of the meetings. So practicing is always a good thing. It's something that I recommend to all of the leads, and not only just this time practicing what you're going to say, but your connections. Most people are going to be using Zoom. If you have Teams or other links that they're going to be using, just make sure that the Zoom works for you, for your headphones, for your computer, your station. Just try all of that out on the link prior to having your first meeting, just so that you can hopefully avoid any issues. But we all know that the issues come up without warning. And then the last thing pre-meeting I would recommend doing is reading the survey. So there's a Survey Monkey out there. It's nice to know what you're going to be asked to fill out prior to the meeting so that you can make sure you get as much information as you can in the meeting. But that Survey Monkey is really just to help you with guiding the conversation. Don't feel like you need to walk through each of those. It needs to be a flowing conversation. And if you don't get to something, you don't get to it. It's not the end of the world, but just familiarize yourself with that survey so you know what things are going to be asked of you after the meeting itself. During the meeting, we're encouraging cameras on. Understand if you don't have the IT equipment to have the camera on, but we really do. That's kind of what actually puts a face with our messaging. So cameras on. With those cameras on, like Kim said, dress business casual is fine. A polo, whatever. If you're not getting up and moving around, we don't really care what. If you're wearing slacks or jeans or shorts on the bottom half, but as long as your camera ready, it's really what we like to say. Log in early so that way they're not there before you. That way you can have any conversations you need to prior to. Make sure that your background's an appropriate background. Use the blur feature if you need to, or use a brought-in background if you need to. If it's a messy bed with laundry on it, maybe blur that one out, or put something back there for you. So just kind of be aware of what you've got going on in the background of your meeting. Something to be aware of. Keep your phone off or keep your phone on silent so that way it's not buzzing in the meeting and you're not getting the feedback from it. And then just a good practice is to keep your microphone on mute until you're talking, just because it is something that it can provide feedback. Everybody's computer is different. You just never know what your computer is going to do with that person's speaker system. So just keep yourself on mute if you can. A couple other things is stick to the CSE script. So what we're giving you, it's not, I say script, but to our messaging. Stay with what we're messaging. You're not here to promote yourself or your company. Obviously, share the awesome things your company has done as it relates to our messaging. But it's not a time to promote yourself. Absolutely no campaigning. It's not something that's even legal, but it's something that we do need to say. If you're looking to run for office or anything like that, this is not the time to do it, and you can excuse yourself in the meetings if it's something that you don't feel like you can refrain from. And then also, this is the excitement of space is that it's very bipartisan. So keep that bipartisan feel in all of your meetings. Obviously, you're going to get a little bit of a flavor from each meeting that you're in. We are talking to politicians, right? And so you're going to get a little bit of that, but don't delve on into anything that's not in our messaging that does bring a partisan flavor into it. So don't go talking about other topics that you want to just because you know they're one party or another. Stick to the messaging. It's pretty easy, very bipartisan messaging. And also have it's okay to not know an answer to a question they ask. We're coming in as grassroots. Obviously, a lot of us are in the industry. Not all of us are, but we don't have all the answers, and we're not coming off at like we have all of the answers. So feel free to take a question and answer it later, and in no means feel pressured that you need to find it while you're in the meeting or anything like that. So keep that in mind as well. Last thing is keep your eyes on the meeting. Just if you're taking notes, sometimes I find it easier to take notes, next to my computer rather than switching screens, because sometimes that makes it harder to get off mute and whatnot fast. So just normal video etiquette is really what we'd like to make sure everybody's doing. And then after the meeting, during the meeting, you'll thank them. If you want to follow up, thank you. More than welcome to do that follow-up. Thank you. I would make sure that it's coordinated as a team so they're not getting 3 or 4 different emails. And then fill out the survey. That's huge for us. We have been doing the survey for a really long time, and we get really good data out of the survey that we're able to share with NASA, that we're able to share with all of our different partners. And it's something that we really rely on to see how our messaging is coming across. So fill out that survey. If there's any questions or any follow-up that they want, there's a spot for that in the survey. You can put that in there. And so I would definitely make sure you're designating someone after each of your meetings to fill out that survey. And then if there's any follow-up that's required, if they ask something of you that you have that you could send them, you can feel free to do that. We do like to coordinate most of that through the citizens. So if there's questions or anything like that, feel free to push that on to your survey, and our team will filter through that and get answers back to them as soon as we can. But I do know there's some times where it's something that's easy for you to answer for them. And that's about all I had. Obviously, Brian, Joe, if there's anything else that you think I'm forgetting, feel free to jump in.
No, great stuff, Kelly. Thank you. And hopefully we'll be able to have a couple of minutes of Q&A at the end, but I do want to jump into some of the key messaging, just given that timing and how long we have everybody. It looks like we have about 15 minutes left. So I'm going to jump in. I think the first and foremost is I want to make sure that everybody's communicated, if they're not a team lead, has communicated with their team lead. If you're having any issues or haven't heard from your team lead, please reach out to Kim so we can make sure that we can help make that connection and get you synced up with them. As Kelly mentioned, making sure that you have a good kind of flow to the meeting and understanding who's covering what is really important. And so I think team leads will be reaching out to you if they have, well, they should have already. If not, they should be today, and helping work and coordinate some of that stuff so that you're ready to go. With that said, I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about what are we going to talk about in these meetings and what some of the key messaging is. The first part is that I want to make very clear that while there are some of us that work in the space industry, right, and we see this stuff all day, every day of what's going on, the expectation is that most folks that are part of this trip are not following the ins and outs and day-to-days of the space industry. What we are and what we really do value is your input, some of your students, and what you're doing as your student activities and pursuing as internships or research areas or studies. And then there are a number of you that are community leaders and involved in various types of either politics or business or whatever the case may be, and how the space industry impacts you. So at the simplest level, the key message is what your connection is to space and why that's important to you and why they should support NASA's budget and direction because of that. So we had a big meeting with all the students late last week, and I think that the style that they present is often a very good one, which is when it kind of goes around the room for people to speak, to make sure that you introduce yourself, say your name, who you're with, and what you're working on, why you're passionate about the space industry, and then connecting that to NASA and why they should see that as an important thing to do. And then also good to be able to add something in that you think might be of interest or help them understand where you're coming from. And that can be a NASA spinoff. That can be work that's going on in the industry that you're familiar with. That can be the way that NASA impacts your business or your future career opportunities if you're a student. So being able to share your message, not necessarily what the bigger picture is. But I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about that bigger picture and what's going on with NASA and in the space industry right now. It is an exciting time in the space industry. Probably many of y'all saw the pictures of the Space Launch System core stage getting stacked in the vehicle assembly building in the last couple of days. Just incredible stuff going on. There is a one-pager that's kind of our key messaging document. I encourage everybody to be familiar with that prior to your meetings. The team leads, I believe, we're sending that out to their teams. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you ping your team lead on that. But includes basically the key messages in terms of supporting NASA's exploration missions, the Space Launch System and Orion and all the equipment to get them to fly successfully. the International Space Station and the world-class research that's going on board Space Station. And then commercial operations, including getting crew to and from the space station and cargo to and from the space station. A lot of exciting stuff. On that document, it also talks a little bit about why we do these things and the benefit that we get back as people. It talks and shows some of the hardware of stuff that has been done since the last time we were in DC. And then finally, as Joe mentioned, something that we've been including in our messaging for a long time is what China is doing and their successes in that effort, and a little bit about why they are doing those things. They recognize the value of a robust space exploration program. And so we shouldn't take our lead for granted. This is an opportunity for us to really say we need to care about this stuff and put some effort towards it. So now, if you think about it, for the first time in about 50 years and the second time in history, the United States has the only human-rated exploration rocket and spacecraft that are ready for deep space exploration. And that's the Space Launch System, Orion, and the ground systems at Kennedy to support them. And all of the integration of the first vehicles, all the testing is completed, and now they are delivered. So we really are close to getting the first launch up. And the hardware is complete and delivered and being stacked. It really is some great stuff, and I encourage you to take a look at some of those pictures. With those vehicles, we have, and these are my numbers, these aren't scientific or official, but we have about a 10-year head start on what China wants to do. But they have made very clear that this is something that they consider very important and that they want to try and do also. It gives them a strategic window into leadership, something that we use as a soft power tool to engage with other nations. So it really is something that they're looking at, and we need to not take for granted. There are suppliers for these programs in all 50 states, and so you can make the jobs connection to all of the people working on this in various levels, and that's everything from the big integrator companies to small businesses that make pressure control valves and sensors and other things. There's work all over the country and literally in all 50 states that helps support these efforts. The other thing that NASA is spending a lot of time looking at is what comes next, right? What are the tools and capabilities that we need as a country to go land on the moon and eventually go out beyond that? And all those capabilities, whatever direction NASA ends up selecting and going, will be the things that we need to continue to go out and explore space. And that's kind of at the point where we are right now. It's really exciting. In low Earth orbit, the U.S. continues to lead the world with our international partners as we start the third decade of ISS, or International Space Station, utilization. It's the world's flagship human spaceflight program. Been remarkably successful. It enables us to test hardware that we will be used in deep space exploration. And allows us to do human factors testing and all sorts of research that has benefits on life on Earth. One of the things that has been brought up in me at times is that you see in the news where they're doing work on board space station to keep it operational. There was a leak that people may have seen a couple months ago. There's been hardware. There was a debris strike on the robotic arm. These are all things that will happen to any deep space exploration hardware. The space station right now, every one of those that we have, we're solving those problems. And we're learning and can transfer that to deep space exploration programs. Those are benefits to us when we learn about stuff like that and allow us to go explore deep space. It will make us more capable, and we'll learn those lessons when the crew is a couple hours from getting home rather than a couple days, or in case of Mars, a couple months. We're cataloging all that experience to keep the ISS operational and transition that to deep space exploration. And extending the life of the International Space Station is very important. We have we now have commercial crew and cargo online. The SpaceX Dragon and Boeing Starliner in various phases of their flights, and so great news there and helping keep those operational. There are more. The U.S. fleet of spacecraft is larger than the rest of the world's combined, and so we have a lot of options. And the question is, how do we use those for partnering with international partners, using that as business cases to develop new markets that don't exist today? There's a lot of opportunity out there, and that comes from investments in NASA. I also want to talk just for a second about the President's budget request and some of what's called NASA authorization and appropriations process. So in a perfect world, the way this process works is the President proposes a budget. Congress then takes that budget as a starting point and then puts their flavor to it and additions and subtractions and whatever that may be, and that is somewhat consistent with what's called authorization, which directs NASA on what they should be doing. Appropriation funds NASA to do those things, or funds NASA to do the things that it's funded for. Right now, the president has introduced a budget for this year, as the administrator noted, a budget that we think is a very reasonable budget and prudent budget to support NASA. Also, as the administrator noted, there are opportunities to fund additional things that we think are worthwhile. And so budget plus-ups are a good thing and help NASA speed up their processes. The Senate last week passed what was called the Endless Frontiers Act, which includes a draft of, or not a draft, includes a Senate authorization bill for NASA. Our position is that authorization bills that support NASA's programs, support suppliers, and ensure our success are good things. The House is yet to take up an authorization bill this Congress, but expect that they will do so. But let me step back for a second. You don't need to be an expert in the status of the budget, the status of authorization bills, and frankly, getting into those can often be dangerous territory because somebody will have one specific thing and they'll ask you about it. The simple version is we support robust funding for NASA, and that we support what NASA deems as critical elements to go be successful in human spaceflight. That's it. That's all you have to say. We support what's good for NASA and the funding to do it. And unless you're, really following these things, I'd caution you not to go beyond that. If they want to have a discussion about a line item in the budget, that's something that in the feedback form, there's a section, are there any follow-up actions that you can put that, any questions you were unable to answer. And we take that, and the things that we can answer, we get back to them and do. The things that we can't answer, we pass along to a group called Legislative Affairs at NASA and allow them to respond back to those. So really not our job to be the world experts in what, the right things. We just say, hey, we're here to support. And that support makes a big difference. The administrator noted it. We noted it. When I previously worked at NASA and was on the receiving end of the briefings from these trips, it's a big deal that we're up there and spending our time and effort to go talk about how important these programs are. If a company comes up there and says, support NASA, and we do work for NASA, so of course we say that's valuable. But what really is valuable is when people in the community and students and employees that work at these companies have an opportunity to share that message and really do talk about represent the broader picture of who's valuing human spaceflight. And at a time when there's a lot of partisan issues, it's nice to be part of something that is bipartisan. And as a former boss of mine used to say, at the end of the year, there are people that have their Christmas parties and talk about how many toasters they made that year, right? And give themselves pats on the back. We get to talk about stacking SLS hardware and finishing Orion and launching people into space. It is an easy sell, and it's a great program, but somebody's got to go out and do it, and that group is us. So appreciate everybody joining us and taking a few minutes to talk about this. I encourage you to make sure you're connected with your team lead and figuring out who's going to say what and where you're covered. But I will pause there and see if there are any questions or if Joe wants to jump in. All right, so Fernando, I see you had your hand up. What's up?
Yes. Hey, Brian, very quick. Since this is going to be our first virtual event, can we share some slides with the members, or is it going to be a verbal presentation? What do you recommend?
I think the only ones I'd be comfortable really sharing with Fernando is the Citizens for Space one-pager. We don't want to have formal briefings. This is really about sharing the broader message of what we have. So I think with the exception of the Citizens one-pager, which I think the team leads have sent out to those offices, so they've seen beforehand, it's really about having a conversation and building a relationship.
Brian, I'll just foot stomp too. That ensures that we stay within the messaging that we've agreed to with for citizens. Otherwise, we have in our deep pass opportunities where someone pulls stuff out of their briefcase and they start presenting things that are not citizens' documents, and that creates consternation.
Barry.
In previous years, we've had a document from the NASA website saying how much of the NASA budget goes to their specific districts. Are we not doing that this year?
So all that data comes from the NACE database. I'll see if we can't track it down and send it to the team leads, Barry. we'll have to find it. I'm not sure if it's how updated or if it's been updated, but good put. We'll take a look.
I found a link to it in the SLS Orion EGS suppliers conference. So I have a link to where I could go get the information, but I wasn't sure if that's something that we're presenting this week.
Send it over to Kim and we'll take a look at it and see. I mean, talking about the impact is I think in every meeting talking about the sort of workforce impact across the country. But yeah, if it's accessible for the team leads to include that, I think so.
Recognizing, of course, too, and it is Barry, recognizing that we're part of an ecosystem of advocates. So earlier this year, there were suppliers going up, and they were talking jobs, and so while we can reference jobs, we're not a supplier organization. We talk about jobs in terms of a broader sense, but I recognize, all politics is local, and if you can say that they have jobs and funding and NASA dollars going into their district, they're going to pay attention. But we don't want to lose that grassroots flavor and let people tell their personal story. If I could just add one quick thing, and that is relative to your personal story, at least take into account or consider where the members might be coming from. If they're in the Midwest and they've got a lot of agriculture or so forth, try to appreciate your audience. Don't necessarily change your story, but at least be aware of that. And if you come from a state which is quote unquote like a space state, and you may be saying, this is why I think it's important, why it's good for me. But let's say you're in Florida on the Space Coast and you're talking to someone from Rhode Island or Oregon, and they say, well, that's fine, but you're from the Space Coast in Florida. Of course, you're so supportive of this. Try to find ways that you can say, listen, even if I didn't live here, my views would be the same, because I see it for the broader national good that it brings, and these benefits are not limited to my area. So if it's kind of like if your message sounds very, very parochial to your geographical area, it's going to limit the impact it's going to have on members, because you're going to be talking to members in offices, broadly speaking, across the country.
Thanks, Joe. I think Robbie has a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. When you were talking about suppliers versus constituents, Joe, and I was looking at all our names on the screen, do we want to make an effort to, lots of us are using work computers, to just get our name that shows? I assume this is going to show up when we have the meetings too. You see what I'm asking, Brian?
I don't think well, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, I'll let you go, Joe.
Well, let's see. I'll let you correct me. I don't think we've never really tried to hide our identities. For example, we just, in the meetings, it's not what, for example, I go in even with the Senator Nelson, I said, I'm Joe Mayer, chairman of Citizens for Space Exploration. I'm not the government relations person for Lockheed Martin per se. So now if someone asks, hey, you seem to know what's your day job, I'm not going to lie to them. I will tell them, and I don't hide, I haven't created a different email address. So Robbie, I don't know if that answers the question, but
no,
we generally don't advertise.
I'm not implying, don't just the way you answered. I wanted to, everybody is exactly who they are, and we're all totally honest. But our names, some of them come up with NASA org designations when you look through the list of names on the screen.
Hey, Robbie, I'd add just one thing to that. Generally, in the opening of every meeting that I have, I say who we are, and as part of that, I reference we're about a third industry people that work in the industry, about a third students, and about a third community leaders that are in or around the space business. And so you kind of got that mix, and everybody brings a unique perspective on why they support NASA, but where we align is that support. So
I like that, Brian. That helps me. That helps me know how to frame it when we set up.
Yeah. But I think you've referenced a really important point, though. However, if if there is information or data that's going to a congressional office and somebody's name ends with nasa.org or NASA, it is important because they could come back and say, wait a second, what is NASA? What is this person at NASA? Where are they? Why are they lobbying our office? And so I think there is a sensitivity there. I'm not suggesting you change your email address. I think there's an awareness that if you're with the Chamber of Commerce or you're with a company or you're with it doesn't raise the same issue potentially. And so I think anybody who is associated with NASA that is part of this trip, this is my opinion, if asked or if the question comes up, reinforces the fact that their activity as part of Citizens is on a voluntary basis and not part of they're not getting paid by NASA to go to Capitol Hill and lobby, that this is a voluntary basis that they're participating.
Hey, I know we're at 12:30. I think we'll have folks, there still are a couple of questions raised and I'm game to stay on for a few more minutes, but just want to respect folks' times if they need to jump off, but we'll be on I think as long as needed to answer questions. And with that, I see Sarah's got her hand raised.
Okay, no, sorry. I don't use Teams a lot, and I was just gonna say, if you're a student, call today. If you just mentioned, I could have to turn on at least student a lot. So if you're a student and you're going to be in these meetings beforehand, sometimes using Teams, they won't allow you to use the camera function.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that, Sarah, to your point, well, A, I think you're on my team and we're using Zoom the whole week, so good news there. And B, for other folks, I think what you were breaking up a little bit, Sarah, but I think you were saying is basically the thematic is make sure your technology works with the systems that you have, and to test stuff ahead of time if you're uncomfortable with it to make sure that it works. And if you do experience issues, reach out to your team lead. If they're not helpful, reach out to Kim or me or Joe, and we'll figure out a way to make sure that that your voice is heard in those meetings.
Brian, anybody who reaches out to me for IT support is in deep, deep trouble.
Fair point. Noted. Reach out to Kim or me for IT stuff, and we'll help as best we can. And I saw Marcia had her hand up for a second. Marcia?
I just wanted to say back to the conversation about your identity on your profile. Check and make sure if you're changing between devices that it doesn't, or that it's very easy to understand that your name is up there at the very least. Because I saw some coming in that were just departments with no name attached to them, and so all platforms typically give you the ability to change what your name, how your name appears on your account when you're entering a meeting. So just make sure that it is identifiable. Whether it has your business in it or not is up to you, but just making sure that it doesn't say iPhone Bob or station 72 or just a phone number, because I know some people will be attending on the fly at some points too, as they travel about their day. So just making sure that you're easily identifiable.
Yeah, great counsel. I see Bria Smith raised her hand.
Hi, I was just wondering, so if we're having a meeting in Zoom, I know sometimes for like the profile pictures, it will use like your profile picture from your email or something like that as like your icon in the meeting. Is that okay to have like your profile picture, or should we remove that from our email entirely when we're in these meetings?
So let me step back for your question and just kind of speak globally, and this hopefully will answer your question. We want to come across as professional. And so if there's something in there that's concerning, that you're worried that picture would be unprofessional, then I'd ask you to probably try and change that, right? But assuming that it's a reasonable profile picture, I don't think there's any issues with that. Most of the time, what we're going to encourage is to have your camera on, so it would be a small icon even if there was one. But yeah, something to be sensitive of. And I
Okay.
think for the students, that message may go far beyond just these meetings as you're starting your careers.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Did that answer it?
Yes, thank you so much.
Brian,
I
you were
agree.
wandering into career advice.
Yeah, I think
dangerous country.
Whenever possible, always have your camera on, and that should take care of the issue.
All right. I don't see any additional questions. So Joe, I'll hand it back to you to close us out. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, all I gotta say is, Brian, thank you, Kim, Kelly. Oh gosh, everyone that is participating has helped to co-lead this effort. Mike and Jeff, and it's one of those things where you're going to forget somebody along the way. My colleagues in Colorado certainly as well, and each of the students. You are critically important to our success, and those and to our team leads. We've asked a lot more of you this year, and some of the logistics and collaboration with us. So, again, just a hearty thanks. Please let's be mindful and attentive to messaging that will take place over the next couple of days. I know Robin's been hopping all morning with contacts that she has gotten. So things are not slowing down, and it's amazing how there are late breaking developments all the time. Appreciate all of you very much, and look forward to our success, and we will certainly advertise our success to our partners and our champions and people like Senator Nelson. He will hear about the successes that we've had this week and take that into account. So thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Take care.